It's Saturday, you know what that means? Stand and Deliver is here again. My name is Rokas and I want to welcome you to it. I hope that you guys have been enjoying the NGC Bocas Lit Fest so far. I know I have, and we have a lot more in store for you guys for the rest of the weekend. So you don't want to go anywhere. This is the place to be. Alright, so we're kicking off Stand and Deliver today with Ivory Kelly. Check out this piece. Tell me how you feel about it.
Hi, I'm Ivory Kelly. I am a Belizean author, and today I will be reading an excerpt from one of the stories in my recent book, Pengering, titled Dear Editor. Dear Editor is about a young indigenous farmer and his wife whose great ambitions are to acquire the legal title to the government-owned farmland that they currently occupy and to have children and raise their children on this farmland. Unfortunately, they experience a pengering, an upheaval that threatens both of these dreams. I'll be reading two small pieces from around the beginning and middle, and I'll be skipping over some parts. By the time he pauses for breakfast, the sun is well along on its swift trek inland. Leaning against a stout innup, Valentino gazes upward into its shady branches as he eats a portion of the tortillas with beans and pepper from his food container. He chuckles to himself as he remembers one of the stories his grandfather used to tell about the gods who sit in the branches of the innup watching the human activities below. To Valentino, they are merely entertaining stories, silly old-fashioned beliefs like praying to the mountains before going to hunt in the forest, which some of the men in the village still do. Yet, as he bites into a second tortilla and looks around his farm, Valentino relishes the thought that the gods are looking down on him, smiling. The hospital grounds are desolate and poorly lit. Only a couple of the light bulbs on the upper and lower verandas of the narrow two-story building are on. Inside the maternity ward, Valentino leads Selene to a chair at the nurse's station, which at the moment is unattended. With Lily still asleep on his shoulder, he goes in search of a nurse, his rubber boots thumping as he walks down the corridor. Valentina returns a moment later, followed by a middle-aged Creole nurse who appears to be in no hurry. Taking a seat in the chair across from Selene, the nurse asks, "When the pain starts?" speaking more loudly than is necessary and looking at neither Selene nor Valentino. "About 2 hours ago, around 8 o'clock, Selene says. "You have your clinic card?" Valentina reaches into the bag and holds out the card with Selene's prenatal record. "Put it there," the nurse says, pointing her chin at the table, still making no eye contact. Valentina's jaws tighten as he places the card on the table. On most other occasions, when he, like many other Mayas from the villages, experienced this kind of treatment when they came to town people speaking to them as if they were children or acting as if they weren't there, Valentina didn't always bear the indignity in silence. But this time, he takes a slow, deep breath and manages to quell the floodwater roaring in his chest. The nurse finishes the paperwork and points Selene toward one of the beds. The white sheets, the letters PGH written with black permanent marker on the hems, is thin and worn, but clean. Valentina helps Selene get settled and prepares to return home. He stops at the nurse's desk on his way out. He hesitates, and the nurse finally looks directly at him. "We have 2 nurses on shift tonight, sir, plus the doctor is on call. Your wife will be all right." Lily stirs on Valentina's shoulder. As he exits the ward, he takes one last look at Selene, who has both hands pressed hard against the back of her waist as she paces the floor beside her bed. She is the only patient in the maternity ward tonight. Selene recognizes the pressure at the base of her pelvis, like an urgent need to stool. The baby is coming, but no nurse is anywhere in sight. Selene screams for help. No one comes. She screams and screams until her throat becomes raw. Still, no one comes.
So tell me about Trinidad.
Whenever I talk about Trinidad, I end up sounding like a travel agent. Truth is, there's not much going on there I can tell you about.
Nothing except for goat races.
That's Tobago.
You're telling me that a whole country isn't interesting enough to sustain a 10-minute flirtation at an alphabet dive bar?
Or maybe I'm the one who's uninteresting.
No way you believe that. I can tell. You really don't think much about your country, huh? I'm from a town of 700 people in the middle of nowhere, Iowa, and I can tell you 1,001 things about it before I run out of stuff to say. I'm not saying it's an interesting place. It's boring as hell. But things happen there.
So tell me something interesting about it then.
Okay, well, down in Campbellton, that's my town's name. Back when I used to live there, we had a serial killer, murdered 13 people, then disappeared. The cops thought that whoever it was must have been living right there in our town. How's that for interesting?
It's a bit morbid. Not the kind of conversation I'd use in a bar to get someone to warm up to me. He killed 13 people, you said?
That's right, 13 that we know of. But there's always bound to be a few more, don't you think?
I guess that makes sense. Were you scared?
It's strange. Even though it was just a town of 700, I always had the feeling it could never happen to me.
Really? I figured most people would be paranoid, even in a town of 70,000.
Well, there's a bit more to the story. Do you want to hear it?
Of course I do.
So you are interested.
I never said it wasn't interesting. It's just that people come out to dive bars like this because their lives are miserable. The last thing they want to hear about is a small town tragedy, I'm sure.
Your life isn't miserable like everyone else?
I didn't say that. I just happen to be interested in those sorts of things. Plus, you can't start a story without finishing. She paused, took a sip of her martini.
Alright, get this. The real reason I wasn't scared was that this serial killer didn't just kill anyone. The 13 people, they all had something in common.
She paused again. You gonna tell me? I asked.
Just building suspense. A story's no good if you can't tell it right.
Well, it's working. What did they have in common?
They were all spinsters.
Spinsters?
You never heard that word before?
Should I have?
I guess not. Now that I think about it, I only ever use that word when I'm telling this story. A spinster is an old woman who's never been married. But it's a bit more than that. It's a kind of sad word. A spinster isn't just unmarried. She's too old for anyone to want to marry her. It's like she missed her chance.
What's the word for a male spinster then?
Doesn't exist. Men never get too old to marry.
One of life's little injustices.
Anyway, this killer only targeted spinsters, like I said. So I didn't feel like I was ever in danger.
Oh. How old were you then?
Around 28, I guess. Not old enough to be considered a spinster, if that's what you're getting at.
So at what age do you become a spinster then?
Definitely a lot older than 28. But beyond that, no age in particular.
It's interesting, isn't it?
What is?
Well, let's say you wake up one day with one wrinkle too many on your forehead, and all of a sudden you're a spinster. One day, you're not a target for the serial killer. The next day, you're a murder waiting to happen. What do? Do you marry just for the hell of it, or do you take your chances with the killer?
I moved to New York. In a city of 8 million, I'm sure I can meet some lonely sap who doesn't mind a bit of gray hair, get hitched, and move back to Iowa with my peace of mind. Problem solved.
Would you ever really move back?
Not a chance. And that's got nothing to do with the serial killer either. 700 people is way too small. You understand.
Yeah. For me, 1.3 million people is too small.
Is that how many people there are in Trinidad?
More or less. Although I feel like I've been using that figure for the last 10 years.
What about you? Would you go back?
Not if I had a choice.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Now, you guys will realize by now that everybody experiences things differently. So Aleah has an interesting, very short story for us inside Stand and Deliver. Aleah, take it away.
My silent screams. You slip out of me so easily, noiselessly, painful, voiceless, till I put the pen to paper, and the ink becomes my silent teardrops, splattered so formally, it's a miasma of emotions. Silent screams escape as I bawl my eyes out, noiselessly, painful, voiceless. And finally it is over. I am empty, numb and hollow. My goodbye driven out of me, noiselessly, painful. I think I can't do this again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. We inside Stand and Deliver. I hope you guys are having fun. I hope you guys are intrigued and captured by these stories just like I am. Let's head up to the UK. J.A. Lovelock is up next. J.A., take it away.
The cane. I remember the first time I was caned. I was barely 6 years old. I had only been at Rollington Primary for a minute, well, 2 weeks and some change, when my teacher, Miss Dixon, lashed out at me. She was mad and I was reading. I was always reading. It was and is my favorite thing to do. And as I loved reading so much, I thought I could do it when and where I pleased. I didn't get it that when the teacher is teaching, I should pay attention and not read my book. She had told me to stop it several times before, but I could not help myself. I read on. So this one day, in the hot and humid Kingston heat, she lost it, grabbed the cane and whacked me. We were all shocked, all 46-year-olds, me, and I think even Miss Dixon herself. The cane came down from a great height and caught me on my right hand and the little finger, the top end of which turned all the colors of the rainbow, red and yellow, pink and green, orange and purple and blue. The immediate sting of the pain was unbearable. This happened just before the afternoon recess, and by the end of the school day, the pain had not changed much. I went home and did the only thing a 6-year-old would do. I told my grandmother. It is generally understood that if at school and the teacher whips you for whatever reason, you never ever go home and tell your parents for fear of getting another walloping. Fortunately for me, at 6 years old, I didn't know that. So on reaching home, I marched straight up to my grandmother, told her the teacher beat me, and showed her the battered finger. Now, my grandmama was a very mild-mannered and genteel lady, not given to uproar and bad language. I don't recall what she said about a matter of such gravity, if she said anything at all. But the very next day, she was up at the school. She spoke to Miss Dixon in private, so I couldn't tell you what words passed between them. But what I can tell you is that after my grandmama left, Miss Dixon asked some of the older girls to escort me to the ice cream van located at the school gates, whereupon I could have whatever snowball, popsicle, and ice cream of any size, price, or quantity of my choosing. Dear reader, I would have loved to tell you that that was the end of my association with the cane, that the cane and I parted company by mutual agreement and no hard feelings. Sad to say, the cane accompanied me up to my final year of primary school and beyond. But let's ignore that for a moment, because at the end of that first year at Wellington Primary, I was awarded a book prize for being the best reader in the whole school.
The language of women writers must heal. How? How? How do I keep them safe? Kenise Jackson, 20 years old, murdered, body dumped. Jasmine Dean, sight-impaired U.S. student, abducted, disappeared since 2019. The list is endless. Women and girls raped, bodies burned, mutilated, tossed like rubbish in empty lots. How? How do I keep them safe? And what does it say about our development if, despite all our efforts, gender-based violence is on the rise? How do I keep them safe? Perhaps we need to stay in the kumbala until we can erect walls of protection for every girl and woman. How do I keep them safe? What strategies do I need to employ to end gender-based violence? How does this community of women writers help to do more than shed light on these outrageous crimes? The duppy of Kenise Jackson wants to know. The father of Jasmine Dean wants to know. The writer, gender specialist, and cultural activist in me wants to know how. How? The voices of Caribbean women writers have gained worldwide recognition, and many of us write and illuminate the plights, the inequities, these femicides, these acts of misogyny, these patriarchal crimes that have escalated. So how? How do I make my words heal? How do I turn my words into medicine? How do I make my words have power beyond the page? Fix those men who beat, punch, berate, then strangle, mutilate, defile, and move around and among us. How do I keep my sisters safe? How do we as a woman's community help to keep all women safe? What is it that we need to do? I am a woman with daughters. I have many friends with daughters. I feel vulnerable, sometimes alone, often fearful. How? Tell me how. What is it I'm not seeing? What else should I be doing? What is it that we all need to do to reduce and eliminate gender-based violence? How? How do I prevent another Kenise Jackson from being murdered and body dumped in a lot? How do I keep another 3-year-old girl like Novelisa Campbell from being raped, then hacked to death? How do I keep the hundreds and millions of women in Jamaica and Trinidad and Barbados and Antigua and all throughout the Caribbean and the world safe? How do I eliminate femicide? How do I eliminate rape? How do I eliminate rage and fear? How? Now more than ever, my words must be powerful to prevent and correct, neutralize, heal, and transform. What are the words that I'm struggling for? What are the words that will fix this? Words that transform. How? 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 How?
Some very powerful pieces inside Stand and Deliver today. I hope you guys are taking notes. I hope you're paying attention. I hope you're able to catch it all. And if not, you can always check it out again right here on the Bocas channel, right? So we inside the NGC Bocas Lit Fest. This is Stand and Deliver. To wrap up things today, let's head across to Barbados and then Guyana. And I'll see you guys again shortly.
The old man tugged at my sleeve and asked, "How your mother? How Yardy?" I turned, puzzled. I didn't know any Yardy. He was mistaking me for somebody else. "You don't remember me?" he insisted. "I's Nicky." I didn't remember any Nicky. "Nicky, the milkman." "Well, if you don't remember me, you got to know my sister Brenda then. The tall, thin girl that used to walk so fast. She left and gone away. This is 25 years now." I turned to go, but he caught hold of my arm. "People always asking me about she. Boy, I really wish that Brenda would come back home now before it get too late. Get all of that coldness out of her system, you know? Know that she's still real. I still don't understand why she did feel that she did have to leave home." Home? My mind wandered. Where is home? After that first middle crossing and subsequent crisscrossings, there was no home, only escape. Always the need to find a plane, jump on it and wave. Always jumping from the empty steel pan to the frozen melting pot, running to cut canes, cut corners, pick peaches, pick pears, push baby prams, push anything. Hustling, struggling to gain the world only to feel your soul go up in smoke, cracking your spirit, and your cold heart melting nightly and dripping slowly through your eyes. The old man's voice brought me back. "She changed. She ain't like one of me no more. She sounds so sour on the phone. She voice ain't pleasant. She language ain't right. I don't believe she like to laugh no more. The two of we roll and tumble in the same belly and we go up like one person. Now I can hardly remember she. My recollection gone feeble. I don't want Brenda to come back when I get old and daughter she can't talk to she. And I don't want she to come back freeze up in a box to bury. If she could stay here live happy when she was alive, when she would want to come back when she died, what good would do she? And what about me, Father Lord? I don't want to wait in the sweet by to see my sister again." We regarded each other in helpless communion. I had nothing to offer, for I too had fled from the spirit to the flesh. Uprooted and planted in foreign dirt, I had been transformed. I could not feel his emotion. I could not share his pain. While he poured his whole soul out, I thought impatiently of my next appointment. Embarrassed, I turned to go. "It was nice talking to you, son. Get home safe." I was about to turn the corner when he shouted, "Hey, you just here from Radcliffe?" But I didn't know any Radcliffe.
The place was 57 Stanley Town, New Amsterdam. It was about 8 o'clock on Old Year's night of 1949. 4 people sat on a sofa in Eric Benfield's lamplit sitting room. With them sat fear, malicious and aggravating. That they might not endure its dreadful countenance, one of them, Eric Benfield himself, put out the flame of the lamp. It was a wrong move, for gross darkness immediately rushed in and teamed up with fear. Together, the evil pair braced heavily upon the people and so oppressed them that they spoke not a word. Silence at once took opportunity, and like a thick smoke filled the room. Someone had to break the silence before it stifled them all to death. 49 years old Kathleen Fullerton did. She said, "Think we can hang, Eric?" Eric Benfield opened his mouth to answer, but the words refused to come out, and he was forced to clear his clogged throat before he said, "Never the day can u boor pont. Who can stop me? Which power is greater than mine? Everything is covered. Nothing is left exposed. Nobody can swear that they saw a thing. I made sure of that. People will only speculate. But there must be proof beyond reasonable doubt before there can be a conviction. I know law." Kathleen said, "I feel better now, Eric. But between me and you, if Milk Lady didn't come at the time she come, everything would have been okay." Eric Benfield, brother to Kathleen Fullerton, said, "And she made so much noise. She was actually boisterous. She didn't need to be so boisterous. Vulgar woman, a vexation to the spirit. The sudden loud noise threw me off. It also damaged the spiritual process. But if I had just a little bit more time, I could have pulled things right back together." Kathleen said, "I know." Benfield said, "But what happened is killing me. Halfway is not my style. I like to do things perfectly. I like to complete a job properly. A fine finish, I say." Kathleen said, "It's not your fault, Eric." Jeremiah Fullerton, husband to Kathleen Fullerton, squeaked, "He's wounded! And you tell me he's wounded?" Fear was strangling him, and he could barely make the sound of a rat. Kathleen hissed, "If you did bring the boy like you said you woulda, we wouldn't be in this mess." Jeremiah jumped up, and fear lost its hold on his throat, so that he barely stopped himself from screaming, and spoke instead between his teeth. "This shit always look good pon somebody else, especially if the somebody is me. Go ahead, dear, plaster it, but keep some for put pon Dorothy here. She send away the first sacrifice. Nasa?"
Now, usually, Friday and Saturday would be our 2 stand and deliver shows inside the NGC Bocas Lit Fest. However, this year, there have been so many participants, so many people wanting to be a part of stand and deliver, we had to have a third day. So you know what that means? We'll be back tomorrow on Sunday. So which part are you gonna be? You're gonna be right here with us. My name is Ruckus. Thank you so much for being a part of Stand and Deliver today, and I want to encourage you to come back tomorrow. But the day is not done yet. We still have more inside the NGC Bocas Lit Fest. Stick around.